Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That last speaker outlined things that the Labor Party is against. But, Mr. Speaker, let me outline what the Labor Party is for, and let me outline why the Labor Party has major concerns with this bill. The Labor Party is about consultation. The Labor Party is about going out to the people of New Zealand, the taxpayers who will fund this, and asking for their opinion and listening to their advice. The Labor Party is about proper process. The Labor Party is about listening to everyone involved in the sector. The Labor Party is about transparency. The Labor Party is not about doing deals in secret. And the Labor Party is about putting a plan in place that allows consultation, that allows transparency, and that allows proper process. Mr. Speaker, the Labor government was the one that came up with a digital strategy, which recognised the need for ultra-fast broadband, which knew that New Zealand, if it was to increase its productivity and get to the upper quartile of the OECD, needed a decent digital strategy. And what happened with that strategy? It got canned. Who by? Mr. Joyce. Mr. Joyce canned that digital strategy because he had a plan. Mr. Joyce had a plan, and he decided, I don't care what anyone else thinks or does, or their opinion. I said, Mr. Joyce, have a plan. Now, Mr. Foss, I feel a little bit sorry for Mr. Foss, Mr. Speaker, because in chairing the Financial and Expenditure Select Committee that this bill had to run through, I think probably went against every instinct in his body. Mr. Foss knows that the people of New Zealand need to be consulted. And when this sort of bill was rushed through, when the supplementary order paper was rushed through, I could tell that Mr. Foss felt uncomfortable about this, because he knew that this wasn't proper process. It wasn't proper process, and that is just not right. There was no plan, and that is just not right, and it's simply not fair, Mr. Speaker. I know there will be New Zealanders who will be listening to this debate who will remember a telecom, where phone prices went through the roof. I remember being a student in Wellington and having to pay $200 to $300 a month in phone charges because of Telecom's monopoly. The service was dreadful, it was a rort. Well, welcome to this bill. Once again, Telecom has a 75% monopoly on ultra-fast broadband. Now, anyone who thinks that's good for New Zealand, anyone thinks that's fair for New Zealanders, needs their head read. The government, Mr. Speaker, should be ashamed. And like everything that has gone through in the last month with to do with this budget, I would love them to call a public meeting and talk to their constituents about how this is good, because this is going to cost more. This is going to cost more. Mr. Speaker, Labor recognises the fact that New Zealand needs to improve its telecommunications infrastructure. We understand that improved infrastructure will be great for productivity, will be good for education, will be good for business. We know this. We understand this. It's why we set up the digital strategy. But this is not the way to do it. This is simply not the way to do it. And the government, Mr. Speaker, the government is struggling. The government's struggling to meet one of its major 2008 promises. And that is 1.5 billion, 75% of New Zealand homes will get ultra-fast broadband in their workplaces and their schools and to their houses. Now, we believe, Mr. Speaker, when you're spending $1.5 billion of taxpayers' money, you better have your processes sorted out. Because I get the very distinct impression that New Zealanders don't like that. They don't like the secrecy. They don't like the feel that perhaps a deal's been done behind closed doors. This has been a little bit sneaky. They don't like the fact that they can go somewhere, get a regulatory impact statement, or even get a cost-benefit analysis to hang their hat on and say, I see. This is why it's done. They don't like the fact there's no research out there. Evidence. If this was well researched, if there's a lot of evidence, when New Zealanders would go and say, oh yeah, okay, no, I see why the justification is, I see the rationale, how they're going to do this, makes you feel happy. But New Zealanders don't like that. They don't like the sneaky deal sort of stuff. And this reeks of it. This reeks of the sneaky deal stuff. And this is why New Zealanders are not happy with this deal. In fact, it's not only New Zealanders that aren't happy with this deal. I know Mr. Joyce underestimated this industry. He treated them like fools. And this has been shown in the way that they have come out hammer and tongs against this bill. In fact, to the point where Mr. Joyce was forced to pull one of the major platforms of this bill. That's a 10-year regulatory holiday. In fact, I don't think there's anywhere in this world, nowhere else in the world, was there anything like a 10-year regulatory holiday, which basically said, let's wipe out the market, no policemen, do whatever you want to do. In fact, as my colleague David Cunliffe said, the Commerce Commission came out against this bill so hard that I'm surprised actually Mr. Joyce didn't sit down, have a cup of tea and rethink this. But no, he bust straight on through when the Commerce Commission came out and said, we have major concerns. We have major concerns. And that made everyone sit up. And that's why I think, Mr. Speaker, that Mr. Foss felt so uncomfortable about how this bill was done. Because he knew, he read the reports, he saw the Commerce Commission, he knew the Commerce Commission weren't happy about this, and he saw the way that Telecom sat in front of the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee and acted with an arrogance I thought had gone. I thought it had gone 20 years ago. I had hoped it had gone 20 years ago, and it filled me with the same sort of dread I used to get filled with when I got a telecom bill. What were they called in the old days? I don't know. When I got a telecom bill as a student, think, oh my God, $200. This is a point when jugs of beer cost $3. Telecom now has a 75% monopoly on ultra-fast broadband. I don't think that's right for the people in New Zealand. I don't think it's good for the industry. As said, we accept the need for faster broadband, but this is only one part of what is needed to deliver a digital transformation strategy for this country. We want to transform our economy. We know we need to transform our economy by giving New Zealanders better access, the best technology, and making sure every New Zealander has an opportunity to take advantage of that technology. I would say to every New Zealander who has a concern about this, have a look at Labor's Minority Report. Have a look at ACT's Minority Report. Labor and ACT don't often agree on things, but if you have a look at the ACT Minority Report, it also raises major concerns. Have a look at the Greens Minority Report. It raises major concerns. And I heard the Maori Party speak on this bill, but I don't remember them being there. They might have been. So I don't mean to, there's no disrespect, but I certainly don't remember the Maori Party uttering one comment during the process of this bill, Mr. Speaker. So I would ask the question that my colleague Claire Cohen has been asking, what was the payoff? Because this bill was this close to being pulled down because every single party across the political divides, across political philosophies, had a good hard look at this bill, heard the submitters, listened to the arguments and said, whoa, we need to pull back on this. We need to think about how we're going to deliver this because something's not right. When you're spending $1.5 billion, it needs to be done properly, Mr. Speaker. There needs to be a proper process and there needs to be transparency. And I, for one, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't have minded if we delayed this process 6 months to make sure we get it right. Because when you're spending this sort of money on this sort of infrastructural strategy, you need to make sure you get it right. Sure, there is a need and there is an urgency, but nothing that the Select Committee and this Parliament could have pulled back on and worked together on, because this is so important. And like I said, when you get ACT and the Greens and Labor all saying something's not right here, then perhaps something isn't right here. You had David Cunliffe, who used to be the Minister of this, he knows it inside out. You had Sir Roger Douglas, who went through this with a fine-tooth comb. You had Claire Cohen, that actually went around the world, well, to a couple of places, and talked to the different areas that had implemented this sort of thing. And everyone came, Mr. Speaker, to the same conclusion. This simply isn't right, and it's not fair. Let's pull back and do it properly. But, Mr. Speaker, Stephen Joyce had a plan. And this is Stephen Joyce's plan that he is
Order.
ramming through this House.
Time's expired.
And it's not